Hi, and thank you for listening. This is Sherry Andrea. You can find me at sherryspeaks.com. If you would like to donate, you can also do that at sherryspeaks.com/donate. Anything is appreciated, even $1. Okay, so let's get started. Thoughts are not psychic attacks, just visitors. Um, okay, so the reason for this video is because I thought I received an email from someone, and I thought this might help them, me doing a video on the subject and sending them this video. And I thought at the same time to do the video because this information might help others as well. So they had asked me if I could do energy work to clear away thoughts. Totally get what they're talking about. I remember in the beginning when I struggled to control what I was thinking. Like, I'll use a simple example. You're in the car and you're driving, and maybe it's, a little bit busy, not quite rush hour, but it's a little bit busy, and you're just fine, and you're driving along, and you're saying your decrees while you're driving. You're not listening to the radio station or anything. You're saying your violet flame decrees, or you're saying some affirmations or whatever. Everything's going beautifully. You feel good, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, somebody cuts you off terribly. You have to almost slam on the brakes, and immediately, before you can even think, what happens? Some expletives come out of your mouth before you even know what's happening. You're ready to go into full curse them out mode. But you've been trying to get a hold of your thoughts, of stopping and not being reactory. And so you make yourself stop. Even if you let out a couple of expletives, you're like, nope, stop. Instead, I'm going to find something positive to say about them. I remember one time that actually happened to me, and I thought to myself, well, how am I going to find something positive to say? And so I just started basically like looking at their car and coming up with anything positive to say. So I was saying things like, they're probably at least practicing safety. They're probably wearing their seat belts. Their car looks like it's being kept up. It's in good condition, so they probably don't have bald tires. So, they're trying to keep themselves and others safe on the road as well. I was like literally, like really going real far to try to find something positive to say, but it's just an example that you can do it if you try. So the thing is that you have to police yourself. The first thing is you're not going to be able to get control of what you're thinking until you actually start making the effort to gain control. Meaning you've got to police yourself. Well, always be paying attention to what you're thinking. Always, you should be the first one to know you're thinking something negative. This shouldn't be something where you're like, after the fact, you're like, oh, I've been thinking negative things about various stuff for like the last hour. You have to police yourself in a way where you're paying attention. Let's say you're on Facebook and you're scrolling and you come across some posts that you don't agree with at all. And it kind of makes you a little angry with what these posts are saying, and you find yourself thinking, that idiot. You literally start thinking the person that made that post. The first thing you think is, oh, idiot, or this or that, and you're thinking all these negative thoughts. Okay, well, that's the first thing is you have to. It's not avoid certain situations. It's not, oh, this is a sign I should stay off Facebook because it affects me that way. No, Facebook doesn't affect you that way. That is your mind and how it's working. That means that in any situation, your mind is going to work that way. It doesn't matter whether you're on Facebook, whether you're at the DMV, whether you're at the grocery store. This is the way your mind's going to work. So you could be at the grocery store and maybe you're looking for a salad dressing. You got 10,000 choices in salad dressings. And somebody comes along and they kind of reach over you. They don't even say, excuse me. They're not even friendly or decent about it. And they just kind of reach across you to grab what they're going to get. They don't even say anything. They don't even say, excuse me. And immediately that annoys you. And you immediately start thinking negative things about them. Or maybe you even say something you step back and say something under your breath. Okay, that's your mind and your negative ego taking control. So literally, when you have, this is the easiest way for me to say it. If you're trying to clear thoughts, or you're asking me to do energy work to clear thoughts, what you're actually asking me to do is to tie up using duct tape your negative ego and then put duct tape over its mouth too. That's what you're asking me to do. Then you're asking me to take your brain, put it in my head, and work on it. And then once I'm done, put it back in your head. This takes a while. This isn't something that's quick and easy. It's not. It takes a while of policing yourself and making yourself stop when you recognize you're doing a certain behavior, or that your negative ego is having you wanting to get negative or nasty, and stopping and saying, nope, I'm not going to do that. Now, instead, make yourself think something positive or say something positive. Tell yourself, you know what? Because I always say this, pick your battles. Make yourself say, no, I want to have a good day. I want to have great interactions with people. I want to, at the end of my day, feel good because I've had some positive interactions with the people I've run into. That person in the grocery store that reached across you rudely, sure, it was rude, but how are you going to handle it? First of all, you're going to control what you think, and now you're going to take control of the situation. How are you going to handle it? Maybe you will show them by example what should be done, and you're going to step back and say, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be in your way. Now, this kind of friendly interaction you're doing with them, it makes them almost have to be friendly with you because you're not going negative. Now, if you go negative, they'll go negative too. So if you get snotty and say something to them, I guarantee you they're going to come back at you, and it's just going to be a negative mess. But just because someone has behavior you don't agree with doesn't mean you can't have good behavior. Somebody else's behavior isn't supposed to change yours. That's what's meant by hold your light. Some of you identify as being light workers. And that was the one thing when I used to read at lightworkers.org that I was constantly hearing people say when I was like reading channelings and other things. I was hearing them say, hold your light, hold your light, hold your light. And once I learned what that meant, I was surprised at how many people would repeat that, believed in it, and didn't even understand what it meant. It meant that you don't have to change. You aren't supposed to be being affected by your environment, in it but not of it. You're supposed to hold your own light, meaning, okay, when people say, oh, I don't know why bad things happen to me. I'm a good person. Yeah, you are, but you're not supposed to change and switch up every time something in your environment goes to the left. So just because someone is being negative to you or yelling at you doesn't mean that's your cue to go negative too. You've let them change you. You're supposed to hold your light. So if you are that nice and decent person, if you're a person that's like, oh, I act with dignity and grace, well, you're supposed to do that all the time. You're not supposed to let another person's actions change what you're doing. You're supposed to stay true to who you are, what you are. Now, none of this is easy. However, this is kind of like retraining your brain. This is kind of like, imagine if you got into the habit of doing the same thing every day. What if you got into the habit of, um, I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I wash my face, I put my clothes on, and I go for a walk for an hour. And you do that every day, it becomes almost like a habit, right? So, what I'm suggesting to you, what I'm trying to explain to you, is it's almost like a habit. But if you've lived your whole life letting your brain take control, letting your ego take control, okay, ask the question, do you really think you're going to be able to easily and quickly just overnight stop that? Do you think you're going to get your negative ego to just shut the heck up and sit down just like overnight? You're just going to be able to say, okay, sit down, be quiet, and that's going to easily happen. No, it's a matter of retraining your ego to be quiet by not putting focus on it, meaning the minute, and you have to recognize it too. If you can't recognize what it is you're dealing with, okay, so say you say to me, I don't like where my thoughts are going, I'd like to clear them, then, but are you first, can you recognize what's going on? It's almost like saying, if you can't recognize what's going on, if you don't know what's happening, if you can't name it, that's like a doctor prescribing you medicine, but they don't actually know what's wrong with you. They can't diagnose your symptoms, but they're going to prescribe you some medicine anyway. No, they first have to figure out what's wrong with you. Then they can treat you. So you've got to know what it is, you know what I mean? You've got to be able to recognize that's my negative ego. I always use the example of, when you're trying on clothes, you're trying to decide what you're going to wear either that day or to a special event, and you put something on you haven't had on for a little while, and yeah, maybe you've gained about 10, 15 pounds. So you put this outfit on and you look in the mirror, and what do you hear in your head? You hear, oh my gosh, I look fat in that. That's what you hear in your head, but that's not really you. You're not really saying that. That's your negative ego. Like going, you can't wear that, you look fat. That's your negative ego. Because your negative ego, and you can recognize it, your negative ego usually isn't encouraging, isn't positive. That's your higher self. But your higher self can't be heard because your negative ego is always speaking up, always talking. So now your negative ego can't even get the chance to be heard. So the first step is you've got to control. It's like control the voices in your head, which is your negative ego. It's so amazing that the negative ego can be so easily heard when the higher self is so subtle. But yet the negative ego, it makes sure you hear it, right? It's the negative ego that is the criticizer of other people. It's the negative ego that makes you think, "Ugh, idiot." You know what I mean? When you're thinking about something somebody did, it's the negative ego that goes, "Oh, what an idiot they are." That's your negative ego. That's not you being a bad person. That's just you not having control of your negative ego. But you got to be able to recognize what it is you're dealing with before you can solve it. It's also your brain not being not being in control of your brain, because your brain is like this computer but it's a computer that's run automatically by itself all your life. You've never tried to be like, hey, I'm the boss. I tell you what programs to run. You've never done that. But you're not going to be able to do it overnight. This is something you have to work on every day. And it's simple. You start with policing yourself. You start with the simple process of always paying attention to what you're thinking at any given time. If you realize, I'm I'm thinking this negative thought about something or someone, stop. First of all, try to retrain that. Stop. Make yourself think of something positive instead. Like turn it around. Make yourself think of something positive. I know it sounds like, oh, this will take ages. This will take a long time. And a lot of times people don't want to do it because, once they find out what they have to do, they're like thinking, this is going to take forever. I got to constantly, be concerned with what I'm thinking every second of the day. Oh, believe me, it becomes easy. After you start doing it, you'll realize it becomes very easy. What you do is you stop yourself from reacting too quickly. Okay, so let's say, for example, somebody asks you a question, and maybe you know that it's either baiting you, because if they don't like your answer, they're going to get on your case. And you almost don't want to answer because you're like, oh, I don't want to go down this road with them. I don't feel like arguing and fighting with them. Why can't I just have a peaceful day? The thing is, you do, before you quickly answer, because you know what the answer is. But just because you know what the answer is doesn't mean you shouldn't stop. Ponder their question. It is okay to take your time answering. Now, some people will try to bully you and try to rush you into answering. Well, don't you know? Didn't you hear what I asked you? They will sometimes try to bully you like that. I have somebody in my family that when they ask me questions, they just fire them off, one right after the other. They don't even give me a chance to answer. And then I'm standing there like Bambi caught in the headlights, and they're like, well, did you hear what I asked you? And I'm like, you just asked me 10,000 questions and you in a row, not letting me answer any of them, and now you're harassing me about not answering you. That will happen. Still, take your time, ponder the question, and you know what? It's okay not to answer too. I've done that before, and it doesn't make anybody happy that I refuse to answer a question. I just say, I'd really rather not answer that question. And if they ask me, I'm honest with them. And I'll say, it's kind of because I kind of already know that my answers, you're probably not going to be happy with my answer. And I really don't want to argue with you about something ridiculous. I want a pleasant visit with you. I don't want to argue with you. It's okay to be honest, but stop. Don't answer too quickly, because often if you don't think about it and you answer super quickly, a lot of times you're going to be answering with the answer from your negative ego. Stop. Think about what's being asked. Think about what you're getting ready to say. Is that coming? Where is that coming from? This answer that you want to give, where is it coming from? Do you think it's coming from your negative ego or your higher self? Does it sound like something positive that would be coming from your higher self, or does it sound like something negative and snide that probably is coming from your negative ego? You don't have to let your negative ego be in control of what comes out of your mouth or actions that you take. When you lose control and you get upset and you quickly take an action and you do something, and later on you're just like, oh man, I know I was upset with what they did and everything, but I probably shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that's your negative ego. Your negative ego said, you know what I mean? It's your negative ego that's like, I wouldn't take that from them if I were you. Your negative ego is the instigator and it's going to get you in trouble every time. Think of it that way. Do you really want a bully controlling your life and what you do and what you say and the actions you take? Some people have ended up in jail and prison from following behind their negative ego. You see it on Cops all the time. Just watch Cops. And I bet you in many of these episodes, you can point out where somebody did something where they were listening to their negative ego. Watch Dr. Phil. You could probably point out many of the guests that their problem is their negative ego, that it's so out of control. So the first thing is, police yourself. Always be paying attention to what you're thinking, what your negative ego is telling you to do. If there's a little voice in your head saying, I should do this, I should do that, check it. Where is that coming from? Because if it's something negative, I guarantee you it's your negative ego. You want your negative ego to be in control? No, of course not. Of course not. And then start stopping before you allow yourself to react. Before you allow yourself to react or carry out a certain behavior, stop and think about it. I used to tell people, to count. Count slowly to 3 or 5, just to make yourself, give yourself time. Because often what I found when people started that practice is they would find that often by the time they counted to whatever number, they felt differently than they initially had. That initial reaction they had, or that initial, that whole, like, what they thought to do initially, how they thought to react initially if they counted, and they didn't need to count very high. They would feel differently once they counted up to 5, because it would give them a chance to really ponder things. Even 5 seconds, that's enough time to ponder things, believe it or not. But my point is, these things don't get resolved just overnight by magic or by somebody's energy work. And I would love it if I could, actually, I would love it if I could do energy work where literally I tied up somebody's higher self, like where I could be like, oh, no problem. I'm just going to energetically go in and duct tape your negative ego. I'm just going to, tie it to a chair, duct tape it to a chair, and then put the duct tape over its mouth, and I'm going to use some heavy duty duct tape. Not just any duct tape. I'm going to use Gorilla Glue duct tape. That's meant for cement, to tape something to cement. I'm going to use Gorilla Glue duct tape, and you'll never hear from your higher self again. I wish I could do that. However, this is not something that you can do energy work for. However, I did respond to the person, and I told them, I said, but you know what this reminds me of, your question to me? It reminds me of 1, mind control, and 2, telepathy. That's what it reminds me of. So there are instances where people's thoughts aren't their own, where they're being messed with. But generally, when something like that happens, usually the person knows it because they've been dabbling with telepathy and communicating with another person telepathically, and maybe now when they want that communication to stop, they can't get them to stop telepathically communicating with them, or get them to stop telepathically putting things in their head. I think that that's one of the easier things, because it requires you to first and foremost recognize that it is a telepathic communication, telepathic message that's coming in, and that it's not your own thought. Um, Often psychic attacks are a lot of times the person uses telepathy, and they'll wait until the middle of the night. Why do you think people that do psychic attacks on people have this habit of they'll get up like 3 o'clock in the morning, or they'll wait until the middle of the night to carry out an attack? Because they want to do it while you're asleep and you're kind of caught off guard. So you wake up in the middle of the night, something wakes you up, and you sit up in the bed in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden in your head you hear, "I want to die, I want to die." They're messing with you. It's like almost like psychological warfare. They're messing with you. They're hoping to catch you off guard, and hoping that you won't recognize that that's really not you thinking that. And then, like, mind control. Yeah, mind control does exist. I mean, there's documents out there where the government it has written about it. And then there is, you remember the movie with George Clooney, men who, I think it was called the men who stare at goats. I think that's what it was called. Well, that was based on a real life story, where the government was taking, I think it was military personnel they were using, and they were having them stare and fixate at goats to try to kill them. I know it sounds like really crazy and far-fetched, but you can look it up. But so there are some instances where literally the thoughts are coming from elsewhere, but usually there are hints of that. That's not something that happens very often. Like I said, generally people who have that happening to them, it's because they're being psychically or spiritually attacked. And generally, if you're being attacked, because that's not going to be the only method, the only tactic they use against you. So generally, I don't meet too many people who fall into that category of what's going on. So you can, don't even worry about that, because most people do know when they're actually being psychically attacked. Why? And they usually know who's doing it, because there's someone that they've come into contact with that for some reason is not happy with them or is mad at them. And then after they encounter with them, and almost immediately after, they start being psychically attacked. So they actually can tie it to an incident and a person. So I'm just saying, don't start emailing me like I think I'm being psychically attacked, because most people that I come across are not. Most people that even think that they've got something going on in their house, like negative spiritual energy or bad spirits in their house. Generally, what I often find is it's their own negative energy they've put out into their atmosphere that's then re-interacting back with them. And that is as simple as, your house just needs to be cleared. Get some freaking sage. Get some sage, or put some bowls of citrine chips around the house to constantly be absorbing negative energy to keep your house clear. It's that simple. But yeah, your own energy will interact back with you, but generally it will not be speaking to you, will be not putting thoughts in your head. But yeah, it can throw you off. It can have you feeling very energetically unbalanced. But so I hope this video helped. If you need help with this, I would recommend not a reading but a coaching. And generally the coachings do help, because it's kind of like, every time you have the coaching, you get a little bit of homework, and with every coaching, you get further and further ahead, and before you know it, you've got the control that you want. But that's what I would recommend is coaching. At this time, I don't do any services for free that often. I mean, every now and then, somebody needs something real quick, but generally I don't, because I do have other things and other projects and stuff that I do going on. So I don't want to give anybody the idea I'm just sitting at home and like waiting for the phone to ring. But I would recommend, if you want help with this, if you think you're at a place where you need help with it, then that would be a coaching that you need. And right on the screen, you can see the scheduler, sherryspeaksnow.simplybook.me. And you can go there and schedule an appointment. And there is a sale going on. So the psychic reading sale, the $15 sale, you can order that regardless of whether you want a reading or a coaching or a combination of both. So that's the one you would be ordering. So whenever I have a sale going on, yeah, it would be for a reading or a coaching, either one. And then, if a sale's not going on, it's still the same. You'll see channeled insights for 30 minutes. That is regardless of whether you want a coaching or reading. I try to make it simple. Anyway, if this helped you, I hope it did. Please remember to hit the like button, please. And definitely do subscribe so that you're notified not only when I make or upload a video, but also when I have a sale on, I do post it in the community section, so you would also get notified of that. So I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great day. Namaste.